Good night, Facebook. Good night, YouTube. Welcome to Mindful Live 542. Are we at 542, I believe? Seeing the zones of racism list posted millionaire says. That's what you see it as, eh? Good night, Instagram. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for being here. It is Mindful Live 542. Once you're on the inside, make sure you hit that like button. 2 taps on the screen out there on TikTok. That's how you hit the like button out there. But anywhere else, just click it. Normal thing. Click that like button. Share the video with literally everybody you meet, everybody you know, everyone on your friend list. Share it out to them. Tell them, hey, we're taking this live. Good, interesting stuff. And let's talk. What's in the news? I see still lots of talk about the Zoso. Been a minute, Ronnie says. Been a minute for you, eh? I've been here. I've been back for a minute. And you weren't here. Yes, the Zosos are still on the news. They're still in people's mind. People are still wondering, how is this all gonna turn out? Is it going to be a positive thing for everyone or not? Is it a zone of racism, as Millionaire says in the live over there on TikTok, or is it really just a way to bring safety to this country? Is it? We see in the news, it seems like the police service has been doing some work. Finally, no offense to the officers out there, but it seems like the police have been up to some police work of late, and some of the things that I've seen the police do, I've been like, yes, this seems like things that are obvious, things that could have been done a while now. Good night, Joy. Good night. Welcome. For those of you in the live, a lot of the chat that I respond most to is over on TikTok. That's where the chat is usually the most exciting. Ronnie, we back multi-streaming. We're back on Instagram and on Facebook. Good night to all of you. But yes, the police have been busy. I think it's 3 or 4 people they've killed already for the year. Now, a lot of the killings seem to be in clearly criminal situations, so we'll see how that goes. Our Prime Minister has been on an obstinate streak. It's interesting with the Prime Minister, looking at our Prime Minister, how she's been speaking of late. I remember a lot of the problems that a lot of people had with our former Prime Minister, Kitos. A lot of the problems that people had was they found the man not to be personable. They found him to be a bit too abrasive, not to be soft enough on the touch for the average citizen. And I mean, as a leader, yes, you want to do the right things in terms of decisions, but you have to have the right mannerisms for people to be comforted in your leadership. To be honest, to be comforted in your leadership. And it's interesting to see the direction that the Prime Minister is going down now. The Prime Minister seems to never miss the opportunity to have a good buffet of late. I don't know what has caused the change, if it's just a change of strategy politically, or if it's the Prime Minister, as she goes further in age, she's becoming less patient. I don't know exactly what it is, but she's a lot more abrasive of late. Joy says the same spirit sitting on Trump is sitting on our Prime Minister. I don't know what spirit you're speaking about exactly, Joy. I don't find our Prime Minister to be of the same cut as Mr. Trump. I find them to be two very different people. I don't find them to speak alike. I don't find their missions to point similarly also. I think it's a convenient thing for the Afro-PNM supporters in Trinidad, who are generally more bought into the Afro-Democrat supporters in the United States, to lump Kamala and Trump into the same person because it's who your affinity group dislikes. But they really are not. Ronnie says the woman is losing her mind. I don't know about that. Ronnie Over on TikTok says that, not Nathan Springer and the Mindful Live. Bear in mind, disclaimer, that's not me saying that, that's people in the live, right? I don't know if her marbles are all accounted for. I would hope so. I think so. I don't know. But she has been on a bit of a tirade, and it's interesting that the Pandey in the wings has been right there behind her. Wagwan Dream Chaser, the Pandey in the wings has been right there responding to many of the posts that the Prime Minister made. And I don't know, maybe somebody in Miss Pandey's camp has been paying attention or had been paying attention to the Mindful Live last year, because this is something that I was pointing out. I was saying that if she wants to remain relevant, it's obvious she wasn't going to win the last election. It's obvious a lot of this isn't going to lead to a lot of what she did last election wasn't going to lead to a massive change. But if she wants to improve on that, she needs to remain in the political conversation. She can't just disappear and wither into the background. People need to see that this person is present in the political conversation, in forming the narratives around the policies and polity of Trinidad and Tobago. Millionaire says her tirade is out of frustration. It's glaring. I don't know. What is she frustrated with? If our Prime Minister is lashing out with frustration, what might she be frustrated with? What is what has bumped up so frustrating for the Prime Minister that would have been unexpected? She won the election. That's not a frustrating thing. I mean, if it is that the country really is broke and they cannot do all the things that they promise, they were saying that the country was broke and the PNM was spending out the money since a long time ago. Good night, Chris 868, pleasant night. Her gamble with Trump bus. How did it bust, millionaire? What's busted about her gamble with Trump? Like, I think this is something that people say because they don't like Trump and they don't dealing with Trinidad is frustrating. Well, that's a fact, boo, because they don't like Trump and they don't like Mrs. Prasad Bisasa. But what has busted about her gamble with Trump thus far? In fact, as far as I see, thus far her gamble with Trump has been working better than I thought it would have worked, to be very honest with you. Millionaire says the oil and gas deals won't be coming true. What's this guy? What's the famous? Oh gosh, I forget the famous predictor of future events, guys. What was his name, boy? Nostradamus. Yes, okay, Nostradamus. That's the name, Nostradamus. The oil and gas deals won't be coming true because you know that, Nostradamus. I think thus far as people like you would have predicted, Mrs. Prasad Bisasa has come out better than many of the naysayers said she would have come out. And this is coming from someone that wasn't a supporter of how vigorous her support was. I was never a supporter of that. But I must say, as it stands presently, she has come out much better than the naysayers forecasted. By now, Trinidad's supposed to be sunk. Venezuela's supposed to have bands of soldiers marching up and down Frederick Street. All of us poor and hiding in a corner facing gunshots. That's the forecast. World War III. Again. The best they get thus far is maybe one of the US spy planes took off from Piaco Airport. And it's not like that is going to the International Criminal Court and going to get somebody thrown in jail. Don't think it's that the citizens don't like Mrs. Prasad Bisasa, but the person she surrounds herself with. No. I think there are many citizens who do not like Mrs. Prasad Bisasa. And that's a fact. That's just the reality. There are many citizens who do not like her. understand. That's your prerogative. But you know, even with the dislike, you have to be able to give a balanced evaluation. That's how you're able to make sense of things. If your evaluation is not balanced, then it's hard to make sense of what is actually going on. If you're saying that Mrs. Prasad Visesa and Donald Trump are the same person, then nothing that happens will make sense to you. Nothing that happens, because they're obviously not the same person and they're obviously not headed in the same directions. But if you think so, then attempting to understand the political landscape becomes extremely confusing. I think I've lived through enough World War III hashtags and predicted stats. I'm telling you, Chris, every Monday morning, it's, you know, this going on be World War III here. Every Monday morning is, hey, World War III, World War III. I was telling someone, I replied to a tweet or a zeet or an X post, and someone was talking about, in that similar tone, something that Kamala Prasad Visesa said, and they were like, this means bombs going to be dropping in Trinidad. And I'm like, you nearly sound like you're wishing for this. Why do some people sound like they're lusting for a world war? Like they're hoping, they're disappointed that this whole thing with Venezuela didn't end up with people dead in the streets in Trinidad and Tobago just to prove Mrs. Prasad Visesa wrong. Millionaire says nothing will happen. Trump will pardon Maduro. I don't know. Maybe he will. And that's the way some of those things go. Maybe he will, and that's the way some of those things go. And it is about the power play of it. It's about the power play of it. And you could look out at the global geopolitics and see the power plays going on. It's not just Venezuela. It's Venezuela, as Venezuela is linked to Iran, and Iran is linked to the refining of that oil and sharing it with Russia. And through Iran and Venezuela as their proxies, Russia was able to siphon off and sell a lot of oil on the global marketplace and bypass a lot of their sanctions. But now with that Venezuela business cutting off, and now with the Iran side cutting off, you're starving Russia and you're starving China. It's the adversaries playing geopolitics in the whole thing. It's obviously not just about freeing Venezuela from dictatorship, of course, but to say like stupid things like the United States just want the oil. The United States has a lot of oil. It's not that they just want the oil, it's about a power play, it's about geopolitics. More than literally they want to ship barrels of oil to the United States in the most literal physical sense. That's not exactly what it's about. Not at least not exclusively. But the Prime Minister has a bill proposed for this season that I'm very interested in. It seems down the line of some things that I spoke about before regarding school and making parents accountable for their children in school. We'll see how that all goes. That will be very interesting. Let's jump into some crime news first though. The police seem to be getting some things right. 4 held for extortion. Some say the war has taken a more cyber technological type of war. Yes, I would say yes and no. The yes, it has taken that kind of form, but I think the main thing of many of the current wars isn't just technological in the sense of hackers doing something, but social. Lots of wars are really about attempting to sway social perspectives and win arguments of PR. As in, it once was that in order to go to war as a country, you just have to justify yourself to your people. Good night, Ronnie. But now, to some extent, you have to justify yourself to the world. because the entire world is able to join in the commentary about whatever you're doing as a country. So the entire world is able to point out logical or moral inconsistencies in whatever you might be doing. And the reality being, because lots of governments, most governments, retain power based on the people, if you lose the support of the people, it's difficult to retain power. So a lot of the war has to do with the game of the visuals. How does it look? What do the people say about it? That's just the reality of it. But yes, for extortion. A sting operation in the Western Division on Monday has resulted in the arrest of 2 women and 2 men accused of robbery and extortion. A release from the TTPS on Tuesday reported the arrest following the operation, which was carried out in response to a report of a robbery. The TTPS stated on Saturday the victim reported being robbed of a vehicle and other personal belongings when he was forced to stop while driving along Cuthbert Circular, Diego Martin. The victim reported he was later contacted by the suspects who demanded cash in exchange for his vehicle. Acting on intelligence received, stated the TTPS, officers proceeded to a location along the Diego Martin Main Road 4 roads where strategic positions were established. The TTPS stated while at the location the victim was approached by a suspect and an exchange of cash took place. Upon the exchange of cash, the TTPS reported officers intervened and detained the suspect, a 39-year-old man of Baird Street, Maraval. The TTPS stated further inquiries led to the detention of 3 additional suspects involved in the crime. Arrested were a 23-year-old woman of John Lane, Dabity, a 41-year-old man of Covine Road, Diego Martin, and a 29-year-old woman of La Puerta Avenue, Diego Martin. Investigations into the matter are ongoing. I like it. These are the things that regularly when I read some crime stories, I'm thinking to myself, but couldn't the police think through this a little more? And finally, you're seeing it. And not just on the police side. I'm grateful that this man who was robbed wasn't an idiot. No offense to the other people who have been robbed out there in Trinidad and Tobago, but some of you, I know you are the victim of a robbery, and in modern times victim blaming is frowned upon seriously. But some victims aren't really smart when it comes to this whole robbery business. Okay, they steal your car. They call you and tell you bring money in exchange for your car. You would just pick up the money and go meet them and think you'd get that exchange going smoothly. And the thing is, that has been done before in Trinidad and Tobago, and most times it happens, it turns out just how you expect it to turn out. But grateful that the man contacted the police, grateful that the police were intelligent and used that intelligence. Not this how people who come not to sell their phones. Nah. Some of them, oh geez. Selling phones in Malik and buying cars in dead ends in Mova. Come on, man. We better than that. Well done to the TTPS. But that wasn't all. The bodies of 2 men killed by cops have not been claimed. Police shot and killed a 3rd man on Friday night after 2 other men were killed by officers earlier that day in Mount Hope. The 2 killed in Mount Hope remain unidentified up to last night, but the man who was killed on Friday night was identified as Kyle Harewood of Clara Street, La Platte Village, Maraval. Hey, you know something interesting that I was pointing out as we were talking about the ZOSOs last night? The zones of what it is, special operation. And I was highlighting this reality that very often when you see crime perpetrated in this country and they catch the criminals, very often they're from similar places. And something that you tend to notice is that some of these zones seem to collaborate now. Regularly, you see people arrested for a crime, and it's not 5 people from the same street in the same village. No, it's not even 5 people from the same village. a man from Marval, somebody from Darbody, somebody from Diego Martin. It's a who's who, a pickup team, an all-star team, a regional all-star team. Interesting. Just a note on the zones of special operation. But yes, the police killed a third man on Friday after they killed the two in Mount Hope, and the two in Mount Hope was from another sting operation. Someone was aiming to buy a car or sell a car, one of the two, buy or sell the car, and they found the whole thing seemed a little suspicious, so they contacted the police, and the police exchanged themselves for the possible victim, and the police went as the proposed buyers for the vehicle. Obviously, the sellers of the vehicle showed themselves to be criminals, and the police killed two, injured a third. Rondell 88 says manufacturing of consent and the dissolution of grey zone signal the start of a global conflict. What do you mean a global conflict? World War III? Again, another prediction of World War III? I mean, at some point in time, I can't take the prediction seriously anymore. If people have been predicting World War III every day for the last 10 years, then at some point in time, if a war does happen to spark off, they'd say, hey, you see, I'm right, but oh gosh, you're not right. You've been predicting it every day. What dissolution of what grey zones and what manufacturing of consent? You know, to go back on the geopolitics a bit, just to touch back on the geopolitics a bit, I find it kind of interesting the way people, and it's nearly sad to me that I see so many Trinis and locals and small country people up in arms and like they're hurt on behalf of the European powers who are now feeling the sanction and tariff power of the United States over Greenland. Like, that has always been how the West has functioned. If they want it, they pressure you for it. And for me, I'm glad. Take away the mirage of, hey, this is the rule-based order. It was never the rules-based order. The rules were always partial to some. And now the United States has taken the position that they are exclusive as to who the rules are partial to. They aren't allowing some of the Europeans to fall amongst the rules like if they are the rulers too. No, the United States has shown themselves that, hey, we are a cut above the rest. And indeed they are. They were always the people that ran the system. It's just that the Europeans for quite some time were able, through cultural, racial solidarity, to act along like they are part of the rulers too. And the United States seems to now be saying, we're fed up acting. Night night ting ting. And the truth is, the United States never acted like any of the global south or the third world nations or the developing nations. The United States never acted like we were equal partners. They never acted like that. They were never in that game of playing that. They acted as they pleased with us. Now they're showing a similar light to the other nations too. Why should I be offended by that? Why does that bother me? We have to ask the US permission to do a gas deal with our neighbor a couple miles away. And without the US permission, we can't do it. And now, you're telling me, as someone who lives in a country in such a position, that I am to feel some way differently for the Europeans that are now put in similar positions like that? Why? Why should I? Why would that bother me in that way? Greenland bothers me. Like, oh no, the United States wants Greenland. That's so wicked of them. How dare they put pressure on Denmark? The kingdom, like I listen to some of the debate on this whole thing, and it makes me laugh. It really makes me laugh. The kingdom of Denmark wants to talk about anti-imperialism and freedom and sovereignty. The kingdom of Denmark that currently has a hold on the island of Greenland wants to talk about, sovereignty and anti-imperialism. Like, oh gosh. Give us a ease now. These things aren't bothering me. No. That's not bothering me in that way. I'm way more interested to see what Delcy does. Why are people so terrified of upsetting the current status quo when the current status quo isn't in their favor? I agree but disagree with your sentiment. I agree that for some people it really is a strange thing that they fight for a status quo that doesn't benefit them. That seems very strange. However, you could understand that humans generally have a natural conservative leaning. And there's a sensible reason why. All that means is we continue doing what has caused us to keep existing thus far. If I'm alive currently, that means whatever took place up until this point has allowed me to stay alive. So if I want to stay alive from this point forward, then it makes sense that I continue doing all the things that I did up until this point. That's how I stayed alive. So, okay, you are telling me that if I start to do things a different way, that it's going to be so much better. Okay, you are telling me that. But what my experience is in reality is there are many more ways to die than there are to live. It's quite easy for everything to go south, for everything to go to hell in a handbasket, as they say. It's easy to disrupt when things are going good. Things going bad is generally the status quo of this world. Hard, rough goings of it. So if things seem to be relatively easy, it's going to be very difficult to get people to want to get out of things being relatively easy. Use, as I say, accelerate and fuel the chaos when your enemies are fighting. Do you have children? Do you have a family? Because that sounds like something a single person would say. I have young children. If I was single, strong, and ready to rumble and adventurous at 22 again, maybe I might say just accelerate things and see what happens for the hell of it. But I have 2 young children. I have no interest in everything going to chaos. Yes, it's easy to, well, not easy, but it's more straightforward for me to see about myself. It's not straightforward to see about 2 young children in the embrace of chaos. That's not an easy thing to do. So when you have people with families, with considerations, and their lives aren't going terribly currently, what impetus do they have to want to see things go chaotic? It's completely understandable why many people have no interest in just upsetting the status quo for upsetting the status quo's sake. Who would that benefit? Who would that work for? Another operation by the police. Police are investigating Police are investigating an incident in Spring Village, Valsine earlier today in which one man was killed and a woman was left in critical condition after the vehicle they were in was intercepted by police. According to police, shortly after 12 noon, officers on patrol in Maloney attempted to stop a vehicle. The driver did not comply and a pursuit followed. The vehicle proceeded west along the Churchill Roosevelt Highway before diverting towards St. Augustine. Police units converged in the area of Bassey Street Extension, Spring Village, where the vehicle was eventually intercepted. During the interception, shots were fired by police. A man and a woman who were occupants of the vehicle were both struck. They were taken to hospital where the man was pronounced dead on arrival. The woman remains warded in critical condition. The police are active out there. They saw them, they closed in on them, and one is dead, and the woman is fighting for her life. There seems to be a turn up in police activity, and listen, for me, I'm not bloodthirsty. I'm not saying I want to see people dead right through. But this kind of police action, for me, is preferable to looking for smooth tires on the road to ticket people for. Like, take all the police off of ticketing duties and send them to do this. Any of these police actions that took place recently were facilitated through road traffic exercises? Is it that they were looking for expired registration stickers and they happened upon one of these heists? You know, the way how some people make it seem like, you know, this is the way to solve crime in this country. Let's head over to some of the things our Prime Minister has been saying. She has been quite short of lead. Kamala calls President a low-level PNM functionary as though so legislation goes to Senate today. Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessar says she will not be surprised if President-appointed senators vote against the Zones of Special Operations legislation today. The law reforms Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures Bill 2026 was passed in the House of Representatives last Friday, while with the government's majority. It will be debated in the Senate today, where the votes of at least 4 of the 9 independent senators are needed for its passage. The opposition is opposed to the legislation. Persad-Bissessar said yesterday that President Christine Kangle was a PNM member and argued that independent senators are not independent as they are appointed by the president. And listen, I have made this point obviously before. Yes, the president is appointed by the ruling party. That is the way politics happens in Trinidad and Tobago. And lots of the independent roles are appointed by or through the president, who, yes, is appointed basically by the ruling party. That has always been how it has been. Always. The idea of senators being independent in that sense, though, is not saying that everyone who was involved in their appointment was an independent person. It's saying that their appointment was not based on political partisanship. And at least that's the idea that is put forward in their appointment. What Mrs. Persad-Bissessar is attempting to do through this is permanently change how politics is done in this country. If she's successful in doing what she wants to do there, we are going to erase the existence of any independent senators. All independent senators will be gone. And while some people like the idea that this will be democratic, I don't think you would like what happens in direct democracy, where winner takes all. The proverbial the proverbial 2 wolves and a sheep voting on dinner. The idea of these creations in our political system is to purposely make it harder for a ruling government to just get their will pushed through. You want to create carve-outs in your society that make it difficult for authoritarianism to run away. If we did not have independent senators and it was winner take all, this Zoso bill would be implemented carte blanche, no response, no conversation. They wouldn't even need to discuss it because it's what they say goes. And our Prime Minister is showing that she is of the mindset that if she doesn't need to discuss it, if she doesn't need to ask anybody to get it passed, she isn't going to ask anybody. She is going to do it because she thinks it's what needs to be done. My way or the highway. I think that's a scary way to rule. And in such a situation, it's a good thing to have speed bumps in your political system. And if you so happen to be a full 100% blind supporter of Mrs. Prasad Bisesa, everything she does is Bible truth in your view. Think about it if someone you hate gets into that position and whatever they say goes without opposition. It cannot be slowed down, it cannot be discussed, it cannot be forced for another day. And in a sense, if you listen, the UNCPRO, when he came out in a response as to why the press conferences are happening at the UNC headquarters, he basically pointed this out. He said there is no distance, there is no room between the UNC and the government. The UNC is the government is the UNC. Now, while to some literal extent that is true, in the figurative sense, just as the idea of independent senators is a kind of figurative sense, yes, they are appointed by parties and appointees, but the idea is they are appointed to be in a position of independence. The idea is supposed to be that although you put yourself forward to be elected as a party, you rule as a government for all. That's the idea. So there is some separation between the party and the government because every citizen of the country isn't a member of the party. So you're supposed to rule for all the citizens of the country. So you can't rule with a party mindset. People would hope. But the UNCPRO says, sort. Party mindset is how we're ruling. I don't like that. And I find it ironic that within a year, the UNC is finding themselves even more spit in your face abrasive than the gruff buffmaster himself, Dr. Rowley. Mrs. Prasad Bisesa went on to say, if citizens in any particular area don't want to be the added protection provided by the government, they are free to let us know. We'll remove it and they can fight it out with the criminals on their own. There are many communities that want the extra protection, so the government has no need to beg any community to accept it who doesn't want to, she said. I personally find this to be a foolish statement. Because a community doesn't actually have a choice about whether they're policed or not. Listen, I am a free market guy. I like the idea of free market, you know. And I like the idea of all agreements in terms of all relationships. So maybe if we privatize everything, that's the direction we go, and each community pays to have a private security company guard their community, and if they don't want to pay, well, they arm themselves and guard it themselves. That's if you privatized everything. That's not the country we live in. That's not the country we live in. I don't get a say in saying I don't want the police in my community. That's kinda insane. That's kinda insane. She added, my priority is to protect law-abiding citizens and help those who want to help themselves. Many people want change in the country, but many of those same people don't want to change. It's simple as that. Every one of us contributed to the state the country is in. We have to accept that reality and work towards self-improvement first, and that will redound to the positive change we want in the country. Could you imagine Mrs. Prasad-Bissessar saying such a statement during opposition? And the thing is, here's the reality. I agree with Mrs. Prasad-Bissessar in this statement, you know. I think she's correct. I regularly say this. The reality is, to fix the situations in Trinidad and Tobago, the kind of actions that would be needed, the kind of changes that would be needed to be done, I think lots of people who say they want to fix Trinidad and Tobago will not be willing to accept the kind of changes required to fix Trinidad and Tobago. So I think Mrs. Prasad-Bissessar is correct in that statement. But that's not the promise she made to enter politics. When she was asking people to vote for her, she wasn't telling people that vote for me and I will get in power and tell you to improve yourself to make the country better. That's not what she said. She said, vote for me, and when I get into power, I and my people will make the country better, because the PNM is making the country bad. That was the advertising. So you're advertising that the present leadership is making the country bad. I will make the country good. You get into power and all of a sudden it has nothing to do with the leadership. Nothing at all to do with the leadership. It's all on self-improvement. All of a sudden people become self-help gurus. Politicians become self-help gurus. It's not on the politicians to fix the situation. It's on you, and we must all take our own individual responsibility in making the country better. Listen, this sounds like an exact speech Dr. Rowley could have given. You see this piece? I can imagine this piece in Dr. Rowley's voice. Many people want change in the country, but many of those same people don't want to change. It's as simple as that. Every one of us contributed to the state that the country is in. We have to accept that reality and work towards self-improvement first, and that will redound to the positive change we want in the country. I could hear that in Dr. Rowley's voice. All it need is an old-time Tobagonian saying slipped in somewhere inside of there, something about some animal and some bush or something reference, and that is a Dr. Rowley statement. Cardell, a reminder, when Mr. Hines said it's not his job to fix the country, people wanted the man hung, quartered, and drawn asunder. All of a sudden, the new politicians have come to this realization. It's not on the leadership. It's on you all. PM blanks greedy energy chamber invite, calls it a farce. Prime Minister Kamala Prasad has distanced our government from the energy chamber, calling its upcoming conference in Port of Spain a farce. The Prime Minister confirmed that by letter dated June 24, 2025, she was invited by the chamber to be the featured speaker at its energy conference, which starts on January 26th. However, she minced no words yesterday in criticizing the chamber, describing the body as greedy. The energy chamber and the energy conference is a farce. They publicly pretend to be interested in national development to benefit all citizens, but behind the scenes they carve up the sector for their special interest groups and engage in exclusionary and exploitative behavior, she said in a WhatsApp message. She said the current energy chamber is structured to only serve the priorities of foreign multinationals and select local special interests groups. The energy chamber is a P&M energy chamber, a foreign and a P&M energy chamber, in other words. Quite frankly, I think they are self-serving, greedy, and have acted in a detrimental manner towards citizens and the country. In fact, the state energy companies have a mandate to remove store certification as a prerequisite for qualifying for work in their companies. Chamber weaponized store to suit their own interests and agendas. It's a democratic country. They are free to have their conference, but I have absolutely no interest in working with them, she said. Further, I want to advise that the energy chamber and their current leadership have no influence, authority within my government, the Prime Minister said. If the energy chamber wants to have a conference, they should pay for it. Why should state companies pay for them to go eat and drink in the Hyatt? Let them use some of their store money that they extracted from small businesses and contractors to pay for it. Mrs. Prasad Visasa, new and improved, pulling no punches, taking no prisoners, making public enmity with the energy chamber. What's interesting about that, though, is in her statement there, she says that this energy chamber is seeking the interests of foreign multinationals. So that's why she's upset with them, apparently. But if we are to work along with the United States in Venezuela, which companies do you think we'd be working with? And if the foreign multinationals already have representation here, wanting to make deals with them coming out of Venezuela, does it make sense to make them an enemy? I don't know what all who are in that energy chamber and the level of influence they have. I don't know. I know generally that level of influence would not be zero. Whatever the level would be, it's unlikely that it's zero. And Ms. Pandey, who has been recently always in response there to the Prime Minister's words and actions, she had a response. Pandey criticizes attacks on independent senators. Political leader of the Patriotic Front, Michaela Pandey, has criticized comments made by the Prime Minister ahead of today's Senate debates on the ZOSO legislation, describing the approach as arrogant and dismissive of the state's responsibility to citizens. In a Facebook post, Pandey wrote, "This is not leadership. It is arrogance, adding that no prime minister has the right to tell citizens accept all laws or fend for yourselves against criminals. Yesterday it was reported, we know that Prasad Bisesa was quoted. Against that background, Pandey argued that public safety could not be treated as leverage. Public safety is not a bargaining chip, and it is not conditional on obedience, she wrote, adding that the state's duty to protect apply to every community, not only those that fall in line. And that's the reality. Yes, one, I do. And that's the reality. My father's name is not Rowley. So, you start wrong. Wheel and come again, if you want to come again. This is Mindful Live 542. Do you think I did all 542 since last year election? Or is your brain slipping? We then does come out from kick out the PNM on Facebook. She said independent senators were open to scrutiny but rejected what she described as a contemptuous posture towards them. Independent senators are not beyond criticism. They are not elected, and their role must be examined honestly. Pandey wrote, adding that the answer is not contempt, it is reform. She said that if the influence was so consequential, constitutional reform must be placed squarely on the legislative agenda. Let's give you a nice little mute there, buddy. Congratulations on that mute. Yeah. I agree with Miss Pandey. That's not leadership. That's not the way leadership is done. Leadership isn't for those who agree with you. Leadership isn't for those who obey everything you tell them to do and then you give them the benefits. In your opinion, which party had the better track record? What do you mean by track record? The PNM had a much longer track record than the UNC, if that's what you're asking. But what do you mean by better? How do you quantify better in that sense? Because it's hard to quantify those things. The People's Partnership had an oil boom that they governed through during the 2010 to 2015 period. Was their track record of spending during the oil boom something to be pleased with? The PNM had 10 years following that under Dr. Rowley. Was their track record something to be pleased with? And how do you compare them to see which one was better? Under which metric? Which metric are you looking at to see which one was better? I don't know necessarily what is the metric you'd use for that. So saying and truly just a rubric to see which party you support. That's what that question really comes down to. Would you vote for UNC or PNM? That's really and truly the question you're asking, because someone who is a UNC supporter, regardless of whether they have fact or not, is going to see the UNC had the better track record, and similarly for a PNM supporter. So for that discussion, for that question to be a useful one, you have to see on a certain ground. You have to look at it in a certain light. So if you're talking about in terms of ease of doing business, then I'd say the UNC has a better track record than that. The PNM is much more restrictive in what they allow for businesses to do. The PNM seems to attempt to herd more people into the status quo of the business landscape. So I would say that. In terms of contracting levels of corruption, I'd say the PNM has a much better track record. The UNC has a horrible track record. I do work in contracting. The UNC is legendary in how horribly corrupt they are in that arena. So it's according to what you're looking at, which direction you're looking at it in. But yes, I agree with Ms. Pandey here. This isn't how leadership is done. That's not the style of leadership, at least, that I would be looking for. That if you don't like it, well, suffer with the criminals. And the thing is, the thing that makes this offensive is that this hasn't been the tone that Mrs. Prasad-Bissessar spoke with throughout. Mrs. Prasad-Bissessar was not saying these things prior to the last election. Like, people say at the beginning of the live, someone was saying she's the embodiment of Trump. Like, to give Trump his credit, Trump has been saying he wants Greenland since 2016. The things that the orange guy says, he kinda always says. He's pretty, his views are pretty clear. You know who you're getting when you choose that guy. But this stickler for rules, my way or the highway, arrogant supreme leader version of Mrs. KPB was not the version she advertised in opposition. And I'd like anybody to argue differently. Was this the version that she showed in opposition? But let's look at some of the bills. From parental accountability to payroll reform, PM unveils 2026 legislative agenda. The government's 2026 legislative agenda includes a proposed law to hold parents legally accountable for their children's involvement in bullying, violence, and related misconduct, especially in schools. Slow clap. I've been saying this for some time. I feel some of the policy writers sit down in the live and take some of my ideas. But I've been saying this. It's obvious. It is obvious. If your child do my child something, you have to face consequences. I find that should be obvious. That should be plain obvious. The person is a minor. So in the law, we're basically saying they're a sociopath, their mental isn't as such that they take full responsibility for their actions. That's what the law is saying. So if they don't take responsibility for their actions, who does? The parents, of course, because that's what it means when they say you are responsible for your child. Who else would be responsible for your child? I like that idea. I know there are lots of bleeding heart people out there who would say that's so cruel, and you make the child and you don't make the child mine, and all you don't understand, sometimes these parents is be doing the best and they're trying their best, and all you don't know, them trainers have a mind of their own, and the trainers still turn out how they want, and spare me. Figure it out. Because somehow there are some parents who are able to get their children to behave good. If it's magic, go ask the magician parents who could get their children to behave good to teach you the magical spells that they cast to get good children behavior. Go learn those good children magical spells and cast it on yours. Wait, I can't just dump my children in schools for the government to raise them for 15 years again. Nope. I hope not. I hope not. Like all the abrasive, Tanticam's abrasive, I hope she stands her ground on this one for sure. Don't allow anyone to change your mind on this one. And I think this would actually have an effect on school violence. Your child assaulting my child isn't a suspension for your child, but an assault charge on you. Watch how your child stop hitting people. Watch how that go and stop. And I think it's necessary. Because as a teacher, for those who don't know, I teach. As a teacher, I see a greater bifurcation in cultures in Trinidad and Tobago. There's a wider separation between the ill-disciplined and the well-disciplined. Back in the 90s, the badly disciplined children in school were relatively well disciplined. And the really good disciplined children were just really good discipline. The difference between the worst disciplined children and the best discipline wasn't that large. So the kind of problems that the bad behaved children did to the good behaved children was limited. I think the gulf between the two is increasing. Some parents these days do zero parenting. In fact, they do negative parenting. There's the kind of careless parent who doesn't do any kind of parenting. They don't do any work to help the child in their maturation. All right, that's no good parenting. But no, there are some that literally are teaching the children how to be little demons. They are parenting the children in gremlin behavior. And you are out here trying to grow up your nice little angel to be a nice little angel. You can't send the angels and the demons into the same facility. Yes, you can't send the angels and the demons into the same facility and not expect serious difficulties. Prime Minister Cameron Prasad stated last week on presenting the government's legislative agenda in Parliament for 2026 that it is part of the broader policy of this government to address rising concerns about school violence, gang influence, and the lack of effective deterrence. Parents must be more engaged in their children's behavior, especially when schools alone cannot manage escalating violence. The threat of legal consequences may push parents to intervene earlier in cases of bullying. Under this bill, parents could face fines or penalties if their child is repeatedly involved in bullying or violent acts. Talk about logic, kids. Talk what about logic, kids? And for me though, as with most things, especially when you're dealing with law and the government and the state, this thing is in detail or in the details. Because yes, I want parents to face the consequences for their children's actions in schools. But when they say something like bullying would cause consequence legally on the parents, it's a bit more difficult to understand. Because assault is a crime. So you could understand the legal consequence that a parent could face in that case. Bullying is not a crime, by and large. Bullying actually has a pretty broad catchment of actions, like somebody might find calling you big head is bullying. But my head big. If they call me big head, can their parents go to jail for calling me big head? Like, when you go into bullying, how do you where's the delineation there? Who is to say what bullying is? And what could be the legal consequence on an adult for their child being engaged in legal action? Not socially acceptable, but legal. It's not illegal to call somebody ugly. It's not illegal to say that man smelling your hair stink boy and make a scene and laugh at him and do it every day. It's not illegal. So what's the legal consequence for a thing like that? I don't understand the logic Gates introduction there though, by the way. Proposed laws also seek to establish a parole system, expand the criteria for firearm users' license applications, facilitate equal opportunities for disabled people in the labor market, and strengthen various areas of the minimum wage law. I really like the whole minimum wage thing, to be very honest with you. The minimum wage is 0. That's the minimum wage. What you do by artificially increasing the number that someone could pay someone is either inflation or you force the person to get somebody with that money. Between dealing with dress code, hair code, and other people horrible children, I'll homeschool mine, yes? Well, if you all are interested, I haven't thrown out these adverts for a long time, but us over at Mindful Education, that's what we specialize in. We do homeschooling, we tutor in homeschooling, we have homeschooling classes, we run learning pods, small classes with few students that the various levels from preschool all the way up. If you're interested, hit us up. But yes, I'm in full agreement with the homeschooling idea. What do you think on minor drugs like nicotine use in secondary schools? I think it should be illegal because it's illegal in the law. And it should be treated with great seriousness. Because the problem with nicotine use in children, it's not the seriousness that it needs to be treated with. It's not about the children smoking, really and truly. It's about somewhere along the line, an adult gave that to them, very likely. And that's really and truly the seriousness of where the problem needs to be treated at. Where did the nicotine pack switch from adult hands to minor hands? And that's why it should be treated with such seriousness. Because you don't want a society that frowns at age consent laws. That's not a good idea. That's not a good idea. And people bringing up the hair. I spoke about the hair yesterday, but we could talk about it again. Homeschool solves this, for one. Homeschool stops that, for one. Homeschool solves that. Really and truly, it does. The whole hairstyle business, if you're worried about the hairstyle, keep your child home. You could have your child in whichever hairstyle they want. Me personally, in Trinidad, the whole discussion becomes very tricky because the government pays for the school. Anybody knows the saying, he who pays the piper calls the tune. The government pays the school. So the government gets to tell the school what rules they can enforce on here, because they're the one doing the paying. For me though, I would prefer taxpayers' money pays for the school. Yes, taxpayers' money pays for the school, but the government pays the school. You see, therein is that delineation is the problem that the socialists and the communists suffer with. Yes, you want the workers' only means of production, but no, the workers don't. Every individual taxpayer doesn't get a say in what happens in a school. It's actually up to the government officials. Although yes, it's our money, although yes, it's our vote, at the end of the day, the person that actually makes the rule is a person in governance, the government themselves. So the government calls the tune. But for me, what I would prefer if schools can decide that all on their own. And I would prefer that schools maintain that all on their own. Because I think that schools have a technique they use. Let's put it that way. Schools have a technique they use. It's like any other service. You go to an airport. This airport attempts to use a certain measure to get things to happen the way they want. They have rules. You don't park here. You don't stay there. You don't do this. That's how they attempt to get the thing to run. And if the school wants to determine what hairstyle the children wear, I think it should be up to the school. Hezzy George says, we can't move forward and become a first world country if you want to police people's hairstyles. That is the most crock of garbage I've heard. Do you think there are no schools in the United States or in Europe that have hairstyle rules? Do you really think that? Do you think it's only poor people's schools in the poor countries that have rules on hairstyle? What? It has nothing to do with first world status. That, you know, it's first world when your children could go to school with any hairstyle. I find the school should make those rules as they want, and if you want your child to go to the school with no rules, you send your child to that school. And the sensible people will send their child to the school with more rules. And what you would notice is you'd notice a difference in the behaviors, and you'd notice a difference in the outcomes. And then the schools with the strict rules have a better outcome. The schools with the slack rules don't have a better outcome. And slack rule parents want the slack rule children to get tight rule results, but they want to send the children to the tight rule schools and tell the tight rule schools slacken your rules. No. Go to the slack rule school and live your slack rule life. If you don't want the school to care about how they look, about their presentation, if that doesn't matter to you, okay, free up. Your hairstyle don't doing any learning. Why police it? Because it's a matter of discipline. It's a matter of discipline. That's what it is a matter of. Uniforms don't do learning, but why do they police it? Discipline. In the army, your hairstyle doesn't do shooting. Why do they police it? Discipline. And it's how that school decides to enact their discipline. And you know, as I said, there are schools with very slack disciplinary measures. Send your child to government schools with the slack disciplinary measures. But no, you want the results of schools with tighter disciplinary measures. But something slips in your brain in putting the 1 + 1 = 2 together to understand that maybe there might possibly be something of a link between the discipline and the results. If I want a good education for my child, I have to subject them to the principals and deans prejudice and racism. Which principals and deans prejudice and racism? Are you saying that all the principals and all the deans in the schools that you think give a good education are an opposing race to your race? That can't be true, because there are prestige schools in Trinidad with all Afro heads, and there are prestige schools in Trinidad with all Indo heads. So whichever direction you want, you could get. Or are you saying the all Afro heads are racist because they tell your son cut his hair and they tell your daughter don't put in weave? They're racist. That makes them racist. They hate black people because they want you to cut your hair. Listen. Black people sometimes disappoint me to no end, you know. In so many statistics and measures, we're at the bottom. And the biggest issue is your son must be able to plait his hair to go to school. That's your biggest issue. My son had a plait hair and wear earring to go to school. Your son's failing. Like something doesn't click at some point in time, that maybe the focus of this culture on these frivolities aren't working. Like, is nothing clicking? At no point in time would anything ever click. Like, at which point in the cycle would something say to you that, hey, maybe I have to look inward. Maybe I am not the universal victim. We're in a country that has been run by black people for the majority of its independence. And somehow, the black majorities still try to say that the reasons for lack of excellence is discrimination. They don't like black people here. And you know what sickens me? And I was saying this last year when the same issue arose again. What really annoys me is the dishonesty in it. A bunch of black people run out to say we're pro-black. And it's about the African heritage. And when you look at the hairstyles they're asking for, it's not no Bantu knots. They're not going back to Mother Africa and pulling up all classical ceremonial hairstyles and putting that in their child's head and saying we're trying to put the power of the ancestors back in you. No! It's Young Dolph. It's some American rapper hairstyle. A pop hairstyle. The space buns that on the picture, that's not some traditional deep African heritage hairstyle. It's weave and wigs and hair pieces. And this is somehow an integral part in us being African. And if they take that away from us, that's why we're not succeeding. But your daughter's been going to school with the weave and wig for 50 years and the cycle repeats. Your granny went, your mother went, you went, your daughter going, the cycle still remains the same, the weave ain't helping. What's up, Fabian? It annoys me. It really annoys me. Your child has to face the racism for them to succeed. How any of these other black families succeed? Like, you all know there are wealthy Afro families living in gated communities in the West. Rowley lives up inside, what's that, Goodwood or whatever that is with the rest of them. How did they do it with all the racism? Somehow they managed to do it with all the racism. Like, I was making this point last night. And some people don't know because they've never been in that situation. Some of you on the East-West corridor that only went to school with majority other Afros, maybe you don't know, but there are some schools where the Indian boys aren't allowed any hairstyle where the hair starts to fall. It's a buzz cut like they're in the Marines. No gel. Anytime the gel start to make your hair do anything kind of special, they're washing it out of your hair for you. Those schools racist. They don't like Indian. They don't let the Indian fellas express their identity. If the Indian fellas could only express their identity, then I remember there was an era where what's this thing, kajal or something like that. There's some kind of Indian traditional eye something kajal, and some girls were saying that they were using it more on a religious and a cultural basis, but it was eyeliner they were wearing in the school, and the school said, kajal, whatever you want to call it, get it out of your eyes. None of it. Someone talking about first world status. There are first world countries that ban the hijab. You can't go to school and tie your hair how you want to tie it, even if your religion says so. And that's first rule. Like first rule. Like if you know this, and you know the people that attempt to use that first rule argument to get you to see their side are some of the most anti-imperial people. They are anti-colonizers, you know, anti those colonizers. Those colonizers are evil. Let's go back to Africa. It's about the global south, and they're always talking some nonsense about first rule and first rule. What? First rule what? To be first rule, your daughter must be able to wear her hair how she wants. Some schools, the Indian girls, hair over a certain length, wrap it in a bun. It has to be in a bun. Don't play a cut in any bands. All the hair have to be able to hold up in one. There are some schools where Indian girls cut a bob that can't hold up in one, and that they want to get pressure for. Like it's not only race. It's not only race. It's how schools attempt to enact discipline. And as I said at the start, to return to the start where I was, part of the difficulty in Trinidad is that the government pays for it. Exactly, Jiggles. That's part of the difficulty. And the government in Trinidad has to try to appeal to the widest array of people. And they would make it difficult for schools to maintain those standards. But as I said, my belief is I find schools should be able to. But I understand that the government gets to dictate that standard. Just as I think the school should get to dictate it and what the school says goes. I understand that the government gets to dictate those standards. And if the school doesn't like the standard that the government gives, well then, turn your school private, stop taking government money and run your thing. The government paying is where the problem enters in this. The government gets to decide, and if the government says open the doors to it all, open the doors to it all is what goes. So my solution for the schools is stop taking government money, run your school privately, and do your thing. My solution to the parents is be active in your children's education and choose where you want your child to go. If this school is racist, why do I want to send my child to this school? And if your feelings, I was saying this last night, Look at the picture of the hairstyles. And this is why the dishonesty makes me feel to, get a little angry. The dishonesty is aggravating because it's dishonest. You look at the hairstyles that they showed in the pictures, and you can see it was not an attempt to highlight black girls. It was the hot gal hairstyles. That's what they showed. They showed images of the hot gal hairstyles. And anybody knowing anything about anything in Trinidad pop culture, you could see that and tell. You know this wasn't about they don't wear Congo Bongo plaits. You could tell that. People within the Afro community could see most of those hairstyles were not 4C, super kinky, real from the jungles of Africa hairstyles. It was light, flowery Douglas hairstyles. To make it seem like it's a black issue is a lie. If we're being honest, much of the hairstyles were the mixed girl, hot gal hairstyles. Fact. And those people pretending that it's some down to the core of your roots African issue, they're being dishonest. Because they can look and also see it's not about the roots. It's about the image. It's about the image. I remember I was going to school in the crossover period. As in, I went into high school and people were wearing baggy pants as baggy as they could get it. I came out of Form 6 and men were taking in their pants so that they kind of had to roll it off at the end of the day. It's nearly like a leggings they wearing by the time they're done. Great time to go to school. Interesting times. Most interesting of times. Lovely time. I love being a millennial. We had a good time growing up. But I could remember when the school rules were your pants cannot exceed your laces of your shoes. That was a school rule. You can't have your pants so baggy that it passes the laces on your school shoes. And some people trying to get technical, they buy school shoes with no laces. And they say, but sir, I don't have no lace. And the dean still tell you can't wear that pants again. If you wear it again, we taking it off and getting you a PE pants to walk around the school with. I remember those days. And then it swung around and was on the other direction. At one point in time, they were telling me the pants have to be closer than your laces. Then at the next time, they season taking pants. They calling your parents in school if they see your pants taken in. Went into a tattoo piercing shop and saw a Form 4 student getting her tongue pierced. That's ridiculous. And the school rules change. Is it that what the school wanted back in the early 2000s, they wanted tight pants, and the school changed their mind in the later 2000s, and then they wanted baggy pants? No. What the school wanted is they don't want the students of the school to portray an image like I'm going here to look cool. Like this is about my image while I'm in school. No. The purpose of the uniform is to take out the idea and the aspect of your image. Erase that aspect. You're here to learn. This isn't about matching up images. That's the idea of the uniform. So we don't want you to portray an image of a certain thing. Even if you're over 18 and you're in school uniform, they don't want you in a bar because they don't want that image to be portrayed. Yep, then, and that's the thing. The discipline breakdown continues going all the way. So, okay, you're free to wear whichever hairstyle you want, because who says you can't? But then why can't you vape? Who says you can't? As someone said earlier, your hairstyle not doing the learning. The vape not doing the learning. So what's wrong with vaping? Why the children shouldn't be allowed to vape in school? Why not? Vaping not doing any learning? Let's not be ridiculous. Or at least let's attempt to not be ridiculous. Anyway, people, that's all I have for now. I hope you're educated, informed, or entertained. This has been the Mindful Live. Good night, Deadman Pesh over there on YouTube, always there. Good night to all of you over on Instagram, the 2 viewers I see currently, and the viewers over on Facebook. Good night to you too. By the way, Instagram and Facebook, I do look at the comments. I am looking at the comments. If any do come in, I will respond to them. So feel free to comment over there too. What are your thoughts on uniform for the teachers? You know, as we move further in time, I might not mind that idea. Bajan Coin, you can catch all the lives on repeat over on YouTube. They're stored over there. But I might mind the idea of uniform for teachers, because some teachers are out of hand. Some teachers get out of hand too. Full agreement. Some of those teachers, they're not understanding the assignment. Miss, you are supposed to disappear and present the lesson. Not all lessons are anatomy lessons. Alright, until the next one, people, hold it on, stay good, stay well. Stay inside, outside, a little sketchy for real. But I'll be here again tomorrow for the next Mindful Live around that 9 p.m. time. Until then, people, stay good. Laters. Peace. Bye. Bye, Facebook.